Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to all you need to know about Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn's dungeons. Well, not really all you need to know, but at least all you need to know about the 3 dungeons that were in Phase 4. There are a lot of interesting things to say about them, so let me hit right in. You have to go through the quest line to get to these dungeons. It's an inconvenience, and I really don't like it, but you're going to be going through the quest line anyway, so it won't delay you all that much. I just really like the idea of being free to go in whenever you choose. But I guess without context, you won't really know what's going on. But I'm going to help you with that today anyway. So, first let's start out on Sastasha. It is the first dungeon you are going to be able to go to. Essentially, someone mentioned that they saw people taking a bunch of crates and bags into this grotto, this Sastasha area, and they're coves. And it's all pirate themed, but it's not particularly interesting thematically. It's in sort of a cave system. You go through the caves, and I think what they were trying to get at here is that up to this point, you've seen a little bit of evil, a little darkness in the world of Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn, but not a lot. Everything seems sort of happy, and you've heard about this calamity that happened, but nothing seems too horribly bad. And then they send you in here, and you're dealing with pirates. They're essentially stealing women, and the women are saying things that you come across these women, and they're like, I swear that I'm not one of them on what's left of my virtue, and stuff like that. And you're like, ugh, some things are going on here that I don't really like. So it's sort of your first taste of actual evil going on in the world, and that's really what they wanted to get across, was that there is darkness below the surface. There's some bad stuff that will go on in the storyline. As far as gameplay, you want to be careful in this area, especially not to aggro too many things at a time. But apart from that, it should be a pretty easy dungeon. You go through a little bit, and you have these clams right off the bat, and you can't damage them when they're closed, but they are sort of the priority target. So if you have the amount of focus required to be able to just damage them when they're open, switch to another target when they're closed, and switch back, then do that. If you can't, then just hit the clam until the clam is dead. Then you can worry about all of the other mobs. Then you come across a boss, which is, what's his name? I got it written down here somewhere. Chopper. He's a Coral. The only thing you really need to worry about against him is to stay out of the AoEs. He's got AoE attacks. Just, step out of the red circle on the ground when he uses them, and you'll be fine. It's not really all that tough of a fight. But there are some Coral. I can't remember if it's right here, right after this fight, or if it's later on. And each one is a different color. And to move on from that area, just experiment. It's a certain order of activating them, and eventually you'll get it right. It doesn't take all that much time. But that is sort of a hint that there will be puzzles later, and I'm really excited about that, as I've mentioned. But since this is the first dungeon you will ever go into, they're not going to throw anything too difficult at you right off the bat. So, next, the next boss that you'll fight is Captain Madison, and he has some crew that you'll have to fight alongside him. Just focus down the crew first, and then kill him. Not a big deal, he's pretty easy. Next, you will fight him again, because he'll run away like a little bitch. In the second fight on him, it's a little harder, still pretty dang easy. Once he comes down to 25% of his life, he'll summon up some scurvy dogs. If you have strong enough AoEs, you can AoE down the dogs, but if you don't have strong AoEs, just kill the dogs and then switch over. It's not a big deal. And then last, he'll run away once more and get his face murdered off by a creature called Den the Orca-Toothed. And this is the boss that's actually a little tough. What you've got is, you'll have a situation, there's 4, they look like sewer grates, they're pretty big. You'll notice them right away when you go in. And occasionally you'll get a message on the screen that says something about the bubbles are frothing over and there's somebody coming or whatever. Just when that happens, if you are an AoE or a ranged class, you want to be standing on these sewer grates in the first place. But if you are a melee DPS class that isn't the tank, or a ranged DPS class that isn't the tank, you want to break off from fighting the thing and go to whichever sewer grate isn't occupied by someone else and try and select it. You'll be able to see which one is the actual one that you want to use because there will be water coming up from underneath it. Just run over there and activate it. And if you don't activate it in time, ads will show up. Some more mobs. There'll be these little naga looking guys, and that's pretty much bad. If you keep on letting them spawn in, you get into a pretty tough situation. So just make sure you run over there, activate that, no mob will spawn if you get the right one, and then the rest of the fight is sort of tank and spank, just all the normal stuff, and be careful about AoEs, just DPS them down. Easy peasy, and that will be the first dungeon finished. And this is sort of a sign of the way things will progress throughout the rest of the game. A lot of the dungeons, there aren't very many just normal-ass fights. There's usually something complicated about it. And I really hope that they just sort of embrace that and make it as difficult as they can because of intricacies in the combat. Not like, oh, he's got better stats than other dungeons. I don't want to see that. I want to see, you've got to be over here at this time of the fight or else you're in trouble, sort of stuff. And you got to activate this thing, but not before your other buddy activates something over there. So you have to coordinate with that other guy. I want cool stuff like that. But next, we've got Tamtara Deepcroft. This one is just outside Gridania. It is a circular ruin area, and you'll sort of be descending through the ruin as you walk around. It's difficult to notice while you're walking through it that you're actually sort of slowly headed down toward the center, but that is what's happening as you run through. And I think that the circular shape is actually sort of significant. It feels like it was designed to contain something. And at the end of the ruin, you will find out that it is indeed containing something. Cthulhu, actually, but, they don't call it Cthulhu. His name's Galvanoth the Dominator, but, whatever. I'm just going to call him Cthulhu. And that's sort of the thematic element that they were trying to do, is that there is evil in the world, and that you're sort of on the verge, the world is on the verge of this evil taking over, So it's symbolic of what the player is supposed to feel, in that you're going through and everything is barely containing this evil being in the inside, and if the player doesn't help out, he will be summoned and take over, So, the objectives in this area are to gather rosaries, break barriers, and destroy orbs. Now, what this means is you'll be going through passages and you'll come across this area that's got this wall, this sort of energy wall. And that's the barrier. Now, to destroy this wall, you have to go and get a rosary. Each wall has its own rosary. So you'll go into side passages, you'll find a group of mobs that is defending the rosary, which, in my opinion, those groups of mobs that are defending the rosaries are the most dangerous part of the dungeon. There's a high potential for getting in over your head with those groups. Just be very careful with your enmity. Make sure that the tank maintains threat. Don't do over much damage if you're the DPS and make it so that the tank loses threat. But don't do too little, because if you lose, if you don't damage DPS things down fast enough, that full group of mobs will kill your tank pretty fast. You gotta take down that first mob as soon as you can pull off. And healer, you especially, don't get threat. Be careful. Be careful, sir. So then you get the rosary, and it'll just be this little like altar looking thing, and you'll click it, and it can give you a message that you have the rosary, and you can walk back to the wall, and then you can take down the wall, and then you've got a group of mobs. And what you'll notice is there's a priest and a bunch of imps. Now there'll be more and more imps every time you do this, but the first group, all the groups, you just want to focus down the priest first. Make sure that if you're the tank, you keep that on everything, but make sure you focus down that priest before you do anything else. Then you can kill the imps, and then it'll be another phase. Another mob will spawn, and it's this demon-looking guy. And then that fight is actually pretty simple usually. Make sure you don't run out of mana as the healer or anything, but the fight against the second phase is actually pretty easy. Just tank, deal damage, keep everybody healthy. Simple as that. Now each time you do this cycle of gather rosary, break barrier, destroy orb, you will be fighting more and more mobs. It'll be harder and harder. After you killed the demon, there'll be an orb. You walk over to it, click it, activate it, and it'll be broken, and then you'll be that much closer to fighting the boss. You do this 3 times, and then you get to fight the boss, who is Galvanoth the Dominator. Did I pronounce that right? Galvanoth, correct. Okay, so this fight is actually pretty tricky, but not too difficult. Basically, every 25% of the health of Galvanoth, say you take him down to 75% health, then he will summon minions. It'll be more and more minions every time you do it, just like the rest of the fight. Rest of the dungeon, rather. So when he hits 50%, he'll summon some more, and 75% he'll summon some more. The trick is, when there are these minions on the field, he will be invincible. Though you'll see these purple energy tethers that will go from the mob to Galvanoth. If you destroy all of the mobs that have these purple energy tethers, he will then be vulnerable to attack again. Some of those mobs aren't actually tethered, so there is the option of ignoring the mobs that don't have the tethers, but it's just smarter to go ahead and kill everything, because you don't want those mobs running around and attacking your conjurer that's healing you or anything like that. So just go ahead, kill them all, and then go back to fighting him. There is only one other thing to worry about. He has a very large AoE attack that he does from time to time. Just step out of it. Obvious. He won't move while he's doing it, so even the tank can just walk right out of the AoE. If you're a ranger, you can keep dealing damage if you want to, but you have to worry about threat because your tank won't be doing anything to build enmity from outside of the AoE. So, just be careful, be cautious, and make sure you don't get stuck in that AoE. It's actually not so huge damage that the tank can't just stay in it if he's at full health already. So that's something you might want to consider if you're the tank. If you're at full health and you have a significant amount of health, you might just stay in there. It's not so much to worry about. But everybody else, definitely make sure you're out of that AoE. One more thing that I wanted to say about this area, there are a lot of side passages. These side passages often contain treasure chests, and you've got plenty of time on this map to go ahead and explore to your heart's content. So it's up to you and your individual group, but I recommend, if you don't have all the gear already, to go through all those side passages, grab the loot. Some of these chests are worth a significant amount of money, just flat out money. So, and sometimes you get potions too, so that's nice if you want to stock up on potions. So do go ahead and check out all of those side passages. Last, and probably by far the most difficult, is Copperbell Mines. Now, this is outside of Ul'dah, and the thematic element of this, considering that it's after the other two, the first of which was meant to show you that there is evil in the world, the second of which was meant to show you that that evil is on the verge of becoming very powerful, and if you don't act, then the world may well be in a very perilous situation. The third is in Ul'dah, this mine, Copperbell Mines, that it sort of represents human ingenuity. We have all of these pillars and beams, and this place that has so much evil inside of it still has all of this construction and creativity and all of the things that you have to do to make it through these mines, which we'll talk about later, involve things like explosives and you using the assets at your disposal to force the world to work in the way you want it to. And I think that sort of represents that the player does have the ability to overcome all of this evil that's going on. And there's sort of, you can win, you know? You can overcome. And because the mind sort of symbolizes nature, I think that abstractly, it also could mean that you can win against the primals who represent all of the nature. And that is one of two massive enemy threats in the game. So, let's talk about the actual gameplay of the dungeon. The first boss that you're going to come up against is Kotos the Gigas. There's not really much complex about the fight. It's pretty straightforward. He has Spriggans that you have to fight before you fight him. Just AoE those Spriggans down, and then tank and DPS the guy down. It's really, really easy. The next one is much more interesting. Icarus Ire. He is sort of a flan or goo enemy. He's this living latex gelatinous object. And you can't hurt him, is the tricky thing. If you go in here not knowing what you're doing, it's really confusing. The first time I fought him, I had no clue. Nobody warned me anything about it. I walk up and I'm doing my full damage, not looking at his health bar. But if you do look at his health bar, it's barely moving, as if he has like 1,000,000 health, and you're sitting here doing 53 damage or whatever. So it's like a pixel every once in a while will move. But the trick is there's a plunger in the middle of the room. Now, positioning is pretty important in this fight, but not hugely important. What you want to do is have your tank maintain threat on the boss, and just run around in circles. Just keep running, so you won't do too much damage to him. And then have your healer or your ranged DPS sit in the center of the room next to a plunger that's there. And the plunger's name will change when you can use it. I don't know if the name even pops up if you're not able to use it, but once the name pops up, just try and use it. And if you're successful, a bomb will pop out. Now, if you're not familiar with Final Fantasy, a bomb is this living flame entity. He floats in the air, and he has an ability called self-destruct. That's the key. What you do is you pull that bomb over to the boss. Now, the tank's going to want to hold it still at this time, or try and lure the boss to the bomb. And just, you want to hold it next to the bomb. And then an AoE will pop up on the ground underneath the bomb. That means he's self-destructing. Now, you have to protect and make sure that this bomb doesn't die before it self-destructs. It's very important. And so the tank needs to lure the boss to the edge of that AoE. He needs to stand outside the AoE, but the boss has to stand inside the AoE. And then, when it self-destructs, it will finally actually deal damage to the boss, and the boss will split into two. Now, you have to repeat this a few times. And after the first time, Spriggans will spawn, and the Spriggans will attack the bomb. Now, the Spriggans always spawn seemingly in the same location. There's a little platform. You'll probably see me standing in it in one of these screenshots. If you are a melee DPS character, you can stand on that platform and just murder the Spriggan right when it spawns. That's the best tactic, in my opinion. Now, so you're going to do this a few times. Each time, each section of the boss will split into two sections. So it starts out as 1, becomes 2, then becomes 4. And I believe on the third use of a bomb to self-destruct, you can finally damage the things. And by this point, there's a lot of them, but they're actually really, really weak. So just beat the crap out of them once you can actually damage them, and then you can move on. AoEs make it quite a bit easier, and you really don't have to worry about them killing you. They don't do a ton of damage. If you have AoEs, just burst them down. Just burst them all down, it'll be fine. Now, last is probably the trickiest boss in the game. In the first phase, not of beta, but the first sort of phase that you could talk about the beta, I went in and I did this boss. His name is either Gygus the Great, or Gigas the Great, or Gigas the Great, or something. He's a giant Minotaur, that's all that matters. And as far as I'm concerned, there are two distinctly different strategies. The first time I went into this fight, they just told me, do all of the damage to the boss and ignore anything else. Don't fight anyone but the boss. And so that's what I did, and it actually worked great. Since then, everyone has been telling me that the boss goes over, right, and he breaks down a wall, and mobs come out of that wall. And those mobs go and they try and break down 2 other walls. And if they succeed, it's impossible to deal with. There's too many mobs, you'll just die. The tank can't hold threat to everything. And so it didn't work very well to do it the way that's considered right now. What you're supposed to do is, apparently, when more mobs spawn, you just turn and kill the ads as fast as you can before they can pull down more walls. And when more ads come, because the boss will go and tear down other walls, even if you do manage to kill all the ads from it, then you kill those, and you just shift focus back and forth every time that there are ads. But I think, in my experience, it's been much better to almost completely ignore the ads. The tank needs to hold threat on those ads, but other than that, just put all the damage on the boss and burst him down, because if you can pull that off, if you focus hard enough on the boss, then you'll kill him before the ads, the first time, manage to pull down any other walls. And if you do a really large amount of damage, you can kill him even before the first group of ads. The most important part of this is make absolutely sure that you have a completely full limit break gauge when you go into this fight, because damage is of the utmost importance. And when you get to level 2 of the limit break, use it immediately on the boss. And I recommend that you use the DPS class to do this, but it also might be a valid idea to have a conjurer or a caster use their limit break, because it's an AoE, and maybe kill as many of the ads as you can with it. I'm thinking that it depends on which strategy you're going with. If you're going with the strategy of switching focus to the ads when they show up, then you probably want to use the Conjurer Black Mage AoE damage limit break. But if you're doing the strategy where you try and focus the boss down as quick as you can, then you probably want to use Blade Dance on Pugilist or whatever other melee DPS class that you've got. Well guys, that is all you need to know about the first 3 dungeons of Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn. If there's anything else that you'd like to know everything about, please do let me know in the comments section below, and I will talk about it next time.